As a CPA who has worn many hats, I have seen more salaries than I can count. Working in a male-dominated environment has made me feel like a fly on the wall at times when my male counterparts and supervisors have been negotiating compensations for salaries and projects. Every time I see the Equal Pay Day come around, it's a constant reminder that women need to take ownership and be upfront with asking for what they are worth in the workplace. In this webinar, we're going to discuss how you can act confidently and prepare yourself to negotiate a compensation package or a raise. And we're going to talk about how compensation for your services is not just monetary, that there are other things that you can ask for. Know the value you bring to the table and get paid like a boss lady. Our agenda today is to learn valuing and carrying yourself well, preparing for the future of work, doing your homework for the job at hand, getting paid like a boss lady. It is crucial that you learn how to value yourself and carry yourself well. For people treat us as we treat ourselves sometimes, and also for our own confidence in when we're asking for things that people are not providing without our asking. For example, you always see when someone goes to a job interview, sometimes someone wants a CEO level person, but they want to pay you at an intern rate, right? Some people, I love volunteering, but when it comes to your job, to your core business, you definitely should be asking for what you know that the job is worth. In order to really value yourself and carry yourself well, you have to really prioritize your goals and hold yourself accountable to prioritizing your well-being and balancing your life. As an accountant, I always tell students, balance is very important in accounting and in life, right? Investing in yourself, committing yourself to engaging in things that help you grow as a person and as a professional is very important. Doing the best that you can to manage your finances so that you can build a safety net within your control. And if you have the ability to build some wealth as well and work on your self-worth, because a lot of times the reason some women accept less than they are worth in terms of compensation is not because they don't know their value, but because they are having a financial crisis in their life. And the more that you try to find a way to set up some type of safety net for yourself, the more that you're not pressed with, for example, running out of savings or not having money for emergencies, or feeling that you have to take whatever is offered because you've run out of money, right? Some women, even I've heard some women say that they do not feel comfortable asking for a raise because they do not have another moment to work more hours, or that they are not seeing the value that they're adding to their company. And we'll talk about how you can determine if an opportunity is right for you to begin with, but you have to feel comfortable in in believing in yourself and your talents so that you can become a better negotiator. So when I say net worth, this is not a class of talking about where you are building wealth and becoming a millionaire. I'm talking about being comfortable financially so that not having the right enough money is not the reason that you are accepting less than you are worth. So this is the first quote that I want to share with you. I've learned that fear limits you and your vision. It serves as blinders to what may just be a few steps down the road for you. The journey is valuable, but believing in your talents, your abilities, and your self-worth can empower you to walk down an even brighter path, transforming fear into freedom. How great is that? This quote is by Soledad O'Brien. And sometimes just being afraid of running out of money can motivate you to have the courage to ask for a raise, right? So we keep hearing this talk about the future of work, and I'm not going to get into the whole robot business today, but you do have to prepare yourself for the future of work in the present, right? Because there's no, you've heard multiple times these quotes about when the right time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, etc. In the future, people are going to be expecting you to be more agile, to be able to adapt better to change, and to be more flexible. But they're really looking also for you to have a very strong foundation in your subject matter. So I'm an accountant. People expect me to have a broad foundation of certain things that are key to operations of any organization, right? So you have to make sure you have that good foundation, but you also have to make sure you can adapt to change. For example, whenever there are new accounting regulations, I have to be able to understand them and to advise clients and advise uh, organizations about how that affects them. And you have to take initiative in learning and and reading about all of this innovation and technology that affects your role. Like, for example, I'm an accountant, and when I first started on accounting, we had to manually enter all the transactions, and they were reviewed manually, and then we would post them. But now that we have so much innovation in our area, there are so many accounting systems that allow you to pair them with all these applications that think transactions either during a specific period of time or real time, and that frees up the accounting staff for not having to enter everything manually, and it gives them time to be able to do analysis and to support management in making business decisions as opposed to doing all the grunt work. So it's very good to join organizations where for your trade where you're learning what's new in related to your job. And it doesn't matter what type of profession you have. There's an organization out there or some type of online platform where you can learn and keep abreast of what's important in your role. Because if you're going to be asking for top dollar, you have to be able to stay on top of your game, right? And as technology progresses, you're also going to see that people are expecting you to be more emotional and human intelligent and become and have all these soft skills, right? You have to be more self-aware and you have to be better at interacting with people, because as you're no longer doing this grunt work, you're going to be in front of clients, you're going to be working with the teams at your corporation, and it's not just sitting behind your desk. You're going to have to be able to read what other people need. If you're supervising people, you're going to have to understand what it is that they need to do their job, not just wait. As much as we want people that report to us to be very proactive, we also have to make sure that we are giving them the tools to succeed, and that all comes with being emotionally intelligent and remembering that we're working with human beings. So these skills are going to be more and more important as we go along. And as I mentioned before, committing to lifetime learning, right? Because there's so much that there is to learn out there, and keeping yourself learning different things always helps you in becoming better at your job and bringing more things to the table. We're not. I tell people no one is asking you to think of working extra hours. It's more about working smarter, right? Because if you're constantly learning things, you can see how to better communicate with people. You can see how perhaps there's something that's going on in your job that you can suggest more efficient ways of how to work on them, right? And everyone loves team members who are bringing fresh ideas to the table. And it keeps you sharp to be always learning as well, even for things that are not related to your job, but just to keep you with an open mind and to keep you learning. So getting paid like a boss lady is going to require some work from your part, right? You have to prepare yourself, and you really do have to understand what the job descriptions are and the career paths are, because a lot of times the people who are looking to interview you don't understand the entire path. So you have to be very proactive and ask the questions. And you have to definitely understand what the strategic plan of the company is. For example, you can think of some people that are thinking of moving to another state because they would like their child to go to college there, maybe 10 years down the line, and they're looking for a long-term opportunity. But if you don't ask the questions about what the company's strategic plan is, and the company is actually looking to relocate, now you're going to be moving to another state while the company is looking to be moving out of that state. So asking questions is very important when you're looking for a new job or trying to get promoted or you're trying to ask for a raise, because you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself in a place where your goals are aligned with the goals of the company. And not only the goals of the company, you also have to make sure that the goals of the department that you're looking to work for are aligned with you, because a lot of times, I don't want to say, sometimes the HR people are like the salespeople, right? It's everything is wonderful, everything is great, but that's just the showcase, right? The person you're going to be working for is not as wonderful and bubbly every morning at 7 o'clock, or as inviting. Is not going to be inviting you to lunch as much as the HR person. So you have to be realistic as to what you're going to be looking for in your role, right? Who are you going to be working with? Is this person going to be supporting you? You spend a lot of time at work, and you have to make sure that you are not thinking that how the HR person is going to be how your boss is. You really have to be asking questions. And sometimes you have to ask the questions again. And if you're not getting the type of answers that you're like, maybe it's not the right role for you. Because at the end of the day, if someone is not responsive to you when they're trying to hire you, how responsive are they going to be when you're reporting to them? Knowing the market rate and the salary range of jobs is very important. You shouldn't be relying on the people who are hiring you to give you this information. You should be doing some research. And I'm provided some resources at the end of this presentation that can help you with that. But you always should walk into a negotiation of salary or a raise knowing exactly what the range is. It shouldn't be just numbers flying. We're not playing the lottery here, and just whatever numbers come out are where you're going to get. Reviews of the company, as you know, social media has a real impact on how people evaluate companies. And while some reviews should be taken with a grain of salt, you also always have to make sure that you do read the reviews, because if you're seeing that the company is being sued because of certain things, and you're trying to work in that department, and you haven't seen anything about policy changes, etc., or you see that thousands of people who've worked for the company are very unhappy, maybe it's not just a robot posting these reviews. Maybe there's some truth to it, but do keep an open mind, but just look and see. It doesn't hurt to see what is being reported on the companies. Culture is very important, and people don't realize this, because sometimes everything, it's like everything is not comparing apples to apples. You have to understand how you work, have that self-awareness of what works for you, and really truly see what it is that the company is offering and how they do things, because we all know they're not going to change their culture because you came, right? Things change, but it's more of things that have a business reason. Things that are not going to completely change overnight. And if you're not comfortable with how things are at the moment, then you need to make sure you understand how that's going to affect you. If it's something that is going to give you a little bit more stress because you're not used to perhaps the pace of the environment, perhaps you should be asking for more money, because it's going to take you some time to get used to that environment if you don't come from fast-paced environments, and you may be more stressed, and you may need to take an extra vacation or take or maybe whatever it is that you do to relax. So you need to take these things into account. I have another quote to share with you. People think that women don't negotiate because they're not good negotiators, but that's not it. Women don't negotiate because it doesn't work as well for them. Women have to say, I really add a lot of value, and it's in your interest to pay me more. I hate that advice, but I want to see women get ahead. And this is by Sheryl Sandberg. I kind of hate this advice too, but this is an interesting quote. And it kind of hints to the point that women sometimes think they have to give this whole full-fledged explanation about why they deserve more money, and then they include being defensive about it and start mentioning that other people are getting paid more. When you are negotiating for yourself, unless you're negotiating for your department and your subordinates, you should not be mentioning other people's salaries in your negotiation. You really should. That's why you need to be prepared. You need to do your homework and understand what the ranges are for the salaries, what is the market rate for the salaries, and then you can act more confidently. But being defensive is not something you want to bring to the table when you're trying to negotiate your compensation. You want to be seen as a professional. You want to be rewarded for the work that you do. Uh, you don't want to be seen as someone who's just causing trouble and just complaining, right? Because that's not what you're asking for. You're asking to be compensated properly. So don't bring the whole menu to the table. Just make sure you think about how you're going to speak when you're negotiating for your salary. So how do you get paid like a boss lady? You have to know yourself in the role. You have to map out. You have to sit down and think. What would be your week? What would your week look like? What are the short-term and long-term goals that you have? You have to calculate your value proposition. If you don't know what you're bringing to the table, how do you expect someone else to pay you for it? You really have to understand this, have that self-awareness, and have that confidence in yourself, in your talents, right? You have to begin with a salary range in mind. You can't just walk in the room with nothing. Um, but that doesn't mean that you should be saying you shouldn't be communicating that range. I'm not a fan of letting people know the range that I'm thinking about. It depends on what I'm working on. If I'm working as an employee, it's one thing, but obviously, if you're working independently, you have to communicate at some point, right? Don't talk about your past salary. As you know, and I've included for some articles about the wage gap. Your past salary is probably very low compared to what you should be paid. So if you're going to communicate such a low number, that doesn't work in your favor. So whenever possible, and actually in some states it's actually legal for people to ask you about your past salary history. Do not talk about your past salary history. I'm not an HR guru, but maybe you should talk to someone who is. That's not something you should be talking about. The past is the past. You're looking to be paid like the boss lady that you are. If you hopefully you have a whole support team, right, that supports you in your career and your personal life, and it's a work in progress. As you move to different levels, the support team is going to look different. Ask your coach, your sponsor, your mentor, male counterparts how much they would accept for the role, because sometimes we underestimate how much work something is going to be, and some jobs are a lot of responsibility. A lot of it's going to be expected from you, and you're going to be expected to do this all by yourself. And if you don't realize that you're going to be working extra hours, that you're going to be on call, etc., you accept a salary that's less than you should. Now, how are you going to pay for all the extra help that you're going to need and all the extra services you're going to need just to show up at work, right? And be there and go that extra mile. Always compare offers. Even if you already have your heart set on one offer, you should be comparing offers, because sometimes you don't realize how much is being offered by another company, and that's really important as well. Make sure you have a wish list, right? You've probably all heard of the law of attraction, and sometimes you, you attract great things to yourself by just even thinking that they're possible. You never know. Whatever you're thinking about could be something is I that actually exists at another company, right? So don't think that anything is set in stone. Companies have policies, but as companies become more focused on retaining their employees and hiring people that are really qualified and that are buying into their missions, they are looking to make sure that their employees are very satisfied with their compensation, and they're comfortable and they're going to stay around for a while, right? So you just never know what could be possible. So what do you do with all of this, right? You have to ask. No one is going to be reading your mind and knowing that you're not happy with your compensation. You have to sit there, you have to ask for the meeting, you have to ask, bring it up during your performance review, whatever the case may be, ask for the raise. Or when you're in the final steps of your of an offer, have this talk about compensation, right? You're going to be asking for the top dollar. You're going to be talking about flexibility and boundaries. And what I mean by that is that sometimes you have personal situations in your life that require you to either stay later at work, start your day earlier, or start your day later. And um, those are things that need to be communicated. Like if you and your spouse have decided that you're going to drop off your children at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can't be at work at 9. I don't know where I'm based in New York, and New York, the trains are, you can take a gamble with the train. So you can't be in two places at one time. So you need to discuss these things at some point, and you also need to make sure people understand your boundaries. If you are a person who has a lot of personal responsibilities on the weekends, for example, and you're not available to be on call, then this is something that needs to be communicated. Or if you are expected to be on call all the time, then you should need to be compensated for that. Because if you're sitting in the supermarket, or you're sitting at a game, and anyone can just call you at a moment's notice, then you should be compensated for that. People tend to forget about personal development and support. If you are a licensed professional or need continuing education, or there's training that you need to be taking and your employer doesn't provide all of that in-house, you should be asking for the policies on that, right? Don't wait until later, because sometimes it has to be included into the annual budget. It's not and it's up to the discretion of management. So these are things that you need to be aware of, and you need to remember that you need to discuss. Self-care and time off is non-negotiable. Some people take off their spouse's birthdays, or they need to take off a certain part of the year because they need to take care of themselves that's a time of the year that they're emotionally drained, etc. If you have a situation like that, then you can negotiate that. Obviously, there are things that sometimes you cannot negotiate because they're not. If you've worked, for example, at a school, you need to be in the school the whole school year, and maybe you can take some sick days, but you know that if you're a school teacher, you're not going to be taking off within the school year. That's not really professional in how it works. But you have to make sure that you're really taking care of yourself in order to perform your best and be able to do well. So we keep talking about value, and in accounting we have so many acronyms that sometimes we don't even talk plain English. But I thought of value, and I thought, how can I use this for this presentation? And I thought value adding ladies understand expertise, right? No one should. You don't have to be an expert. I don't call myself an expert. A lot of people who have 50 years of experience don't call themselves an expert. But you do have to have expertise in the area that you're working on. You have to be interested in what you're doing and passionate about it. And it's if you want to be paid like a boss lady, you have to have the drive, right? And I want you to remember that it's not just about hours. We're not talking about working 500 hours a week so that you can get paid more money. We're talking about being paid fairly and at a market rate, and being compensated for the value that you're bringing to the company. So how do you evaluate if an offer is even good for you? Remember that one of the things you have to do is you have to determine if an offer is even good for you, if a company is even worthy of having you there. That may sound a little bit arrogant, but it's not about arrogance. It's about making sure that you're not wasting your talent and your time, because getting stressed out is it deters you from your path. You're still going to be able to get through your journey, but it's going to deter you from your path. And you want to make sure that you really understand what it is that you're getting into, right? Because jumping in without knowing how many feet of water is in the pool is not cool, right? And so I've included some questions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of the things that are very important are, for example, because I'm an accountant, I'm always thinking about budgets, right? How will accepting this role affect you in terms of your time and your budget? Like when I think of budgets, I no longer think just about money. I think about time, right? You only have 24 hours a day. If it takes you 4 hours to commute to work, now you just have 20 hours a day. And if you're expected to work 12 hours, how many hours do you have left? What responsibilities do you have at home? Are you studying for something? Do you need to study another 4 hours a day? What is your life like? So you have to understand what it is that you're accepting, and does this match what your life is? Like I mentioned, there are other things that are included in compensation. Do you have a subsidized lunches? Do you have discounted gym memberships? How does the healthcare plan look? Sometimes employers will pick plans that are economically feasible for them, but they may have high deductibles. Are you going to be able to save the money for the high deductibles? I know that there are a lot of tax deferred ways to do that, but is this something that is affordable to you? You have to take this to account. Obviously, you're not going to go through every single detail of every single offer, but the more that you consider, the better it is for you. You're doing this cost benefit analysis as to the value that the job is adding to you and the value that you're adding to the job. And not to mention when you start a new job that you're kind of losing some time and some money because you are going to have to wait for them to pay you sometimes, and you may have to take some time off from your other job, and you just never know, right? What One of the questions I want to highlight is what other are the out-of-pocket expenses? Some people have spent more money in transportation than on rent just to get to this wonderful job with a wonderful company with an amazing title, etc. Uh, I'm only an accountant, but I'm not a fan of spending so much money on transportation. Sometimes it's really worth it, but you have to consider what it is that you're going to have to pay out of pocket. Is your company going to be expecting you to hold meetings with clients, etc., and are they going to be reimbursing you? What does the reimbursement policy look like? And one question that you should think about is, if I had $1 million or more in the bank, would I accept this offer? So going back to trying to be financially solid, uh, don't let your financial circumstances determine if you're going to take a job at whatever is offered. You need to make sure that you're separating that in your thought process, because just because you have 2 dollars in the bank does not mean that you should accept someone paying you 40% less for a job that you're going to be doing and expecting you to do more, right? Because a lot of times as women, we're asked to do more for less. And we should try to even the playing field for ourselves by asking for the right compensation. Always think about the stage in your career that you're in. When you're at the beginning of your career, you're an intern, you're a first year, you're an associate, you're a sponge. You should be delighted to work in places where you're going to be able to learn everything, be a fly on the wall, shadow people, etc. And you really need to understand, what are you going to be exposed to in this job? Are they just going to have you stuck in an office and not talking to anyone, not ever meeting a client, not going to any meetings where you're finding out what the policies are? You really have to understand that. Another thing that you should do when you're trying to evaluate a situation, such as accepting an offer, is if a child in your life that's important to you, that you care about, was getting an offer like this, would you be upset? I mean, a lot of times you ask women, would this be acceptable to your daughter? And they say, absolutely not. So why is it acceptable to you? That may be taken a little bit too far, but just find a way to rationalize with yourself as to have the courage to ask for what is reasonable. So in conclusion, remember to ask to be So you have to make sure that asking to be paid like a boss does not feel like work, right? You're going to be prepared, you're going to be confident, and you're going to have numbers in mind. You're not going to necessarily share them. Do a cost benefit analysis to make sure that you even want to work there, that this is going to be beneficial to you. Be very agile and act confidently. Do your homework, right? Do your homework. Homework doesn't end once we graduate or once we're trained. We always have to go and learn and figure out things so that we come to the table prepared. Make sure you build a support team and you rebuild a support team and you rebuild a support team, because it's very important to have people who support you who really don't benefit anything from the advice that they're giving you, to have someone neutral, to have someone that cares about you, because if not, then we get stuck in situations. It's like asking, when you're buying a car, asking if you should buy the more expensive one, or whatever it is bringing someone more fees. And make sure you always invest in yourself. And I have one more quote here. Give the number first, make it high as hell, then you can't be lowballed. Do the work. Don't just call a number out of the sky. Know the range and then exceed the range, because you can negotiate it down a little bit. And this quote is by Bozoma St. John. And like I said, I'm not a fan of giving numbers out. I prefer to ask for the range and then negotiate, but you will pick what works for you. This next slide is just my bio. And I have some resources here. These I've provided websites and some articles and some books. So you can review this at your leisure and decide what really helps you to become more financially literate and confident, so that you understand what it is that you're asking for and what you're going to be negotiating for. And the first few items are really just for financial literacy and for managing your own money, etc. And the last two are for salary guides. How do you determine what the market salary is? We talk about it, but you need to find a number and find a place that does surveys, that has the actual information for different companies, and it's not just pulling numbers from the air, so that you walk in there confidently and even have, for example, I've used Robert Half's salary guides in the past, and you have it even by city, right? And by the level of the position and the size of the company. So don't just pull numbers from the sky. These are just some books that can be helpful for you to be confident with your money and with balancing your life. Because without balance, we really don't have much. And we constantly have to rebalance things. These are some articles, and some of them are touching upon the salary gap, and others are just encouraging you to ask and negotiate for the proper salaries. And you can pick a forum that works for you, but it's always good to kind of see what it is that people are talking about in terms of salary negotiations, because you never know, you may want to start your own business, and you may have to hire people. You need to understand what is fair, what is correct, what are the trends now, what are people offering. If some companies are offering, for example, some support in repaying student loans, and you're not offering that, you're not going to get those millennials, because they are the ones who are paying for even higher um, payments, right? So you need to understand what's out there, and you need to make sure that you are asking for things that are reasonable. And I turn it over to Maggie.
Thanks, Iralma. I'll just remind everyone now that if you have a question, you can use the chat box, or you can email info@savvyladies.org, and we'll get started with our Q&A here. And the first question we got is, what's your advice on negotiating the salary before starting your first job? I won't be able to talk about career accomplishments because I'm just starting my career.
Okay, so don't feel like you don't have experiences because you're just starting out, because you've been doing things, right? You've you've either gone to school or you've been working other jobs, and there are a lot of transferable skills. So make sure you understand what your transferable skills are that are applicable to the job you're applying to. Also, if you've done any internships or any other types of trainings, make sure you highlight them and how they are compatible with the work that you're going to be doing. Um, do make sure you go to whatever type of career events that are available, where recruiters are talking about how to present yourself so that you know how to present yourself properly and you're not taken out of the pool of candidates before you even start. And keep your mind open, because sometimes you may have a certain career path in mind, and the opportunity you need, your ideal opportunity is not available at the moment, but you may just have to get your foot in the door to a place that can be a springboard for you to get there. So I hope that's a helpful answer.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, you talked about taking initiative, but that's really hard for me. Can you talk about some basic steps I can use to take initiative in my own communications job and show my value?
Sure. I actually am an introvert, so sometimes it's really scary to speak up to something. You know, I've gotten better at it because as you prepare for things, you feel more confident. And when you know what you're talking about and what you're asking for, it's easier for you to be able to communicate. And I found that you have to really know what type of person that you are and be self-aware to understand, are you more of a listener, or are you more of a talker, or what is your style? And who are you going to be talking with? Understanding who you're going to be communicating with, because going to the water cooler and telling someone, I'm not being paid enough, that's not negotiation, that's gossip, and that's not going to get you far. You can talk to your friends about whatever you invent, but that's not what you need. You need to understand who the players are, who's going to be making the decision, right? If it's your boss's supervisor that's going to be making the decision, you know, you can ask for a meeting, or you can sometimes finding someone else in the company where that you can talk to that's not in your department, or who you don't directly report to, helps. Finding someone else that can sponsor you, talking to them, you can have them have the conversation to put feelers out, or you definitely just have to ask yourself what it is that you want, what it is that you think that is lacking, or that what support do you need, what raise are you looking for, and figure out who you need to talk to. Set up a meeting with them. Just tell them that you need to talk to them. Or if you constantly meet with the person that you need to communicate with, perhaps when you have one of your meetings, you can tell them that you need to talk to them. You would like to talk to them about X, Y, and Z. If this is a good time, or can you set up a meeting? So I think putting something on the calendar kind of puts the pressure on and takes it off at the same time. Um, So you have to just think to yourself, what is the worst that can happen? They can say no. You're already working for them. It's not like they're going to say, you know what, don't ask me for raises, get out. We may see that in movies or something, but that's not the reality. A lot of people don't wake out of bed every day to say they want to be a mean person or anything like that. They want to hear you out, and you have to make sure the timing is right. You're not going to ask after you just lost a major deal, or the person said they had a bad day because of something personal. So time it and make sure that you're prepared when they give you the time, because a lot of people will make time for you, especially when you're earlier in your career. But you have to make sure you know what it is that you're going to talk about.
Okay, thank you. And another question for you is, everyone tells me that it's impossible to find a job now that I'm 52 years old. I want to find another job, but I'm afraid no one will hire me. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I'm not going to say my age, but I I don't. Some people do discriminate people because of their age, but do you really want to work for those people? When you have a certain level of experience, you want to work with people who are forward thinking, who really are looking at you and thinking, what can she bring to the table? Not You don't want to work for anyone who thinks they're doing you a favor by hiring you. You want to work for someone who wants to work with you, who wants to use you to carry forward the mission of the company and to make the company more profitable. And you have to kind of be more connected and make sure you're not just blindly sending resumes here and there. Network more. Uh, you have more experience. You've built business relationships. Talk to the people that you're close with, people that you've perhaps considered in the past, and but the opportunity wasn't right or the timing wasn't right. Talk to them and see what is available. Don't let other people's limited thinking limit you.
Okay, great. This is our last question, and I'm combining some questions we have about salary range, and it's trying to figure out when you're researching and the range itself is a huge range, how do you really use that as a guide when the numbers are kind of they seem too large to really have a number in mind? Do you have
Well,
some advice on that?
yes. If there's any way nowadays with LinkedIn, etc., you can kind of see other people that have similar roles. If you have a connection that kind of works in a similar role, if you're close to the person, or you have a friend that works in HR, perhaps you should have a conversation, an offline conversation with them. Or like for example, I've worked a lot with not-for-profits, and some of the salaries you can find under 990, which is public. So you can actually go to the organization, find this document, and see what the compensation was. There, a lot of companies now kind of are self-reporting their salaries as well that are required to. You really have to kind of, once you have a range, kind of think of your own personal circumstances. If there's a person who has higher credentials or has a license that you don't have, you have to take that into account, that you don't have for example, some people need I'm thinking of some of the licenses people need in banking. If you don't have those yet, you understand that you may not be compensated for that yet. And maybe that's another thing that you can ask the company if, for example, once you get this other requirement, are they going to give you a bonus? So that may just add to the conversation. It's those Most of the time the salary ranges aren't as high. You may want to stick with one of the more popular salary guides, so that you don't have that has more specific information, like I mentioned, like by locality, so that you're not stuck looking at ranges that are $50,000 off from each other. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that was helpful.
Okay, yep, great advice. So those are the questions we have. So I want to thank you, Iralma, for a really great presentation, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And as a reminder, we will be sending out the information that Iralma shared for further reading, so you'll get an email on that if you didn't have a chance to write it down. We hope everyone will be joining us again for future webinars, and thank you so much, Iralma.